Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
That was just his background noise, apparently. Alright, on that note, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is some random fuck that no one's ever heard of.
Hi, I'm some random fuck, but I like to go by fuck. Fun story. I just got a car, and my friend wants... My friend has been pushing me to call it Fuck It. So I did, except I gave it the first name Resilient, so now I drive around in Resilient Fuck It.
Resilient Fuck It. Not Resigned Fuck It, but Resilient Fuck It.
And then its middle name is the middle name that the girl who sold it to me gave it, which is Lola. So it's Resilient Lola Fuck It.
Nice, nice. I remember in high school, my friend Andrew had a Mercury, and he called it his he would talk about it with chicks and be like, "Oh, I'll come pick you up in my Mercedes." And they're like, "Oh man, you got a Mercedes?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, yeah." And then he'd show up to pick him up for like a date or whatever, and they'd be like, "Thought you said you had a Mercedes." That's her name.
Genius!
Exactly.
I never thought of that. What the hell?
Anyway, Steve, what are we here tonight to talk about? Because I'm assuming it's not car names, but we could totally do a topic on car names.
Well, I thought the car anecdote was apt because we're talking about a technology-based villain. So humanizing automation, just, lead in. Words. Yada yada. We're talking about, I don't know if he's your favorite. He's my favorite Superman villain, Brainiac.
I would say that. Oh, I'm echoing a little bit, Steve. I would say he is my favorite Superman villain, but it depends on whether or not Darkseid counts.
Okay, so I have a really dumb opinion, which is that I don't think Darkseid's a villain. In the sense that I don't see him as an... Every time I think of Darkseid, I think of metaphysical force of nature versus Highfather, other metaphysical force of nature.
So you think of Darkseid more as like a meteor than as a
exactly.
bad guy.
And when people say Darkseid doesn't have a character, I'm like, yeah, that's the point.
Okay. Well, this isn't in a video about Darkseid, but if you don't count Darkseid, I would tend to agree that Brainiac is probably the best Superman villain. Brainiac's just got this really interesting history to him, this very checkered past, and there's just a lot that you could do with him, or that can be done with him, that just... It's really fascinating, because you wouldn't think alien that collects cities in bottles would be that interesting.
Yeah.
But people take Brainiac to some really fascinating places, and I need to read more Brainiac in the comics. My exposure to him has mostly been through... the television shows and movies and stuff, but at the same time, when they do it that well, who cares?
That's my thing with Brainiac. Like, I want to have a list of 2 or 3 stories to check out at the end of this for people who like Brainiac, and I spent like all week trying to come up with them. There kind of aren't any.
Yeah, like there's the I forget the name of the issue or the name of the writer, but like the first time Brainiac got robot-sized as opposed to being a green alien.
Yeah.
Like that one's pretty famous.
That's more important before it's like, this is how I define Brainiac.
Certainly. But
Grant Morrison did some cool shit with Brainiac in his action run, but like that's the action run before it's Brainiac, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I love the line in Morrison's run where Brainiac says that every civilization creates me. On Krypton, I was called Brainiac. On Earth, I'm called the Internet. I love that line so fucking much.
I love that. And then Jeff Johns has got Superman Brainiac, which I think is the most popular Brainiac story simply because it's got his name in the title and it's reprinted.
Yeah, and that one's got some interesting ideas in it. Like, one thing
I don't like it very much, but yeah.
One thing that I really like about that story is that it establishes there are multiple versions of Brainiac, which just, on a fundamental level, makes sense if you have an alien trying to basically record all of space. If he's doing it on his own, then he's an idiot, because it would take literally forever to complete that mission. But if he sends out drones that are, you know, god-level powerful, that makes a lot of sense. So I really like that side of the story. Johnson's pretty good about those, like, really kind of clever sci-fi explanations.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I wish he'd do more just, like, you know, simplistic, quote-unquote, stuff like that, where it's just kind of like a basic, clever explanation as opposed to turning it into a big whole thing.
Well, and this is why Jeff Johns, for decades, has been the perfect writer for Legion of Superheroes, despite never writing Legion of Superheroes. Although that because this is my thing with Brainiac, is that I like Brainiac a lot. He's my favorite Superman villain, but I like him because Brainiac is the reason we have Brainiac 5.
Interesting. Okay, because I know of Brainiac 5, but I've never really looked into him outside of the Justice League Unlimited episode.
So I don't know if anyone remembers this. It only lasted 2 seasons, but it was relatively recent. There was a Legion of Superheroes cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
I love that cartoon. I think it's amazing. There's some really, really cool, really dark shit that goes on in that show, and there was lots of leaks for the planned 3rd season that was going to take it in really fantastic places, and they never got it. But I watched that show, and it got me into reading Legion of Superhero comics, which are generally hit or miss. They have some really interesting, very well-defined eras. But the one thing that translated from that show, from Superman the Animated Series, into the Legion of Superhero comic obsession was Brainiac 5, who's basically... So Brainiac 5, depending on which age you're reading him in, is part of a collective society that descends from all of the technological exploits that Brainiac has done through the ages. And they basically, all of Brainiac's old technology just get, at some point, collectivized into a society. And they're like, Brainiac was kind of a dick. We don't want to be a dick. So, let's just Vulcan-style live in this little logic hub. And Brainiac 5's like, nah, that sounds boring, and leaves and joins the Legion of Superheroes.
Well, what I like about that is someone has pointed out that Brainiac's mission is stupid in the past. Yep. It's like, oh, well, what, he's going to go collect all knowledge in the universe and then destroy it, but, then you have to wait for a society to develop knowledge worth having, or you have to destroy it when it doesn't have any knowledge, or yada, yada, yada. And, that's a very important contradiction in Brainiac's logic of his traditional plan. So I like the idea that his technology, all of this super science that he gathers over the centuries, kind of becomes self-aware and takes over Brainiac and goes, yeah, this is a stupid mission. We need a new one.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the Brainiac 5 stories deal with, the evolution of Brainiac's thought to be away from Brainiac, but then how easy it is to kind of fall back into it. Because so much of Brainiac 5 story is that he very often, if not him, someone by him or something he creates, gets possessed by the original Brainiac entity's mission. And it becomes a really interesting meta question, which the books never really tackle, but I always wonder about, which is it Brainiac coming back? Or is it simply the idea of innovation has to start with some kind of Brainiac-style obsession with an idea? And I love that. And I love how contemplative and melancholy Brainiac 5 is all the way through. Brainiac, I have the same thing when we get into this other character, but I love Superman. But the reason I love Superman is because he gave me Superboy.
Nice. Yeah, Brainiac 5 is like a really interesting idea. And again, the only time I'd ever seen him was in Justice League Unlimited, but just from that one line he has where Superman's about to beat his ass, and then he goes, "No, you see, Brainiac realized his wrongs, and after forming into biological life, I've decided to make up for those." And it's like, that's just amazing. Whoever came up with that is a frickin' genius of a writer.
Oh, yeah.
But Brainiac proper, let me ask you this. Do you like the idea that Brainiac, that was put in Superman the Animated Series where Brainiac was created by Krypton?
Yes, I think that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. I kind of like that, and I kind of like more of a general... I kind of crossed that over in some ways with what Grant Morrison did, wherein every society creates Brainiac. It's just the technology eventually becomes self-aware, and then, like, the technology gets to the point where it's self-aware, then it discovers Brainiac out in the universe, and they merge.
Wait, correct me if I'm wrong, but in animated series, Brainiac's the reason Krypton explodes, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I forgot.
Well, not directly responsible. It's just the planet naturally fails, but in animated series, he doesn't help them escape. He tells them they're going to be okay.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I was just curious.
Yeah, so I kind of like the idea that like, the technology becomes self-aware and outlives its creators, and then kind of sends itself out to prolong into the universe until it encounters other versions of technology that has done the same thing. And that collectively is Brainiac to me. I really, really like that idea of this is like... Stephen Hawking talked about how he's not sure that intelligence is evolutionarily beneficial, because how close have humans come to blowing themselves up and completely wiping themselves out?
Yeah.
Number of times. Whereas amoebas don't really have that kind of problem. And so I like the idea that our own intelligence kind of... It's very naturally sci-fi. Our own intelligence, our own striving to create things greater than ourselves in machines, kind of across the board of the universe keeps backfiring to the point where it creates something that is more interested in itself. And so I really like that idea.
And you touched on this, but like Brainiac's mission, because it doesn't make any sense, is actually kind of empowering and self-affirming. Because if it's we that created the technology that leads to Brainiac, and Brainiac becomes self-aware and he wants knowledge, in a really twisted way, he's validating our existence because he seeks the one thing that only we can give.
Interesting. Yeah, because machines can't... this is one of those things, I always feel weird saying this, but machines cannot create. We did that whole episode about whether or not machines can think, and to me, creating new ideas that were not pre-programmed into you, and that you did not discover on your own, creating, the idea of a green ice cream cone, that's a weird, silly, useless thing, but it is a unique idea.
Are you dissing mint ice cream?
No, not mint ice cream, a green ice cream cone.
Oh, okay.
So, like, that is not something that I think many people have ever thought of, and certainly I didn't get that from anywhere, but that was a creation in my own head, right? And that's a useless one. Hume would put that under thoughts of fancy, right? But
yeah,
that is something... We're getting into fucking a posteriori and a priori ideas now. Great. Always a good time.
Of course. It's half a entire spectrum of philosophy that we'll talk about nothing but this.
Yeah, but like, so you have ideas that are created, and a machine, as far as I can conceive of, is not physically capable of doing that. Machines can only know what you tell them to know. So they can only get information. They cannot create information in a very specific lens. And so, yeah, to have Brainiac and technology searching for more knowledge, it then needs people, which is why his mission is self-defeating, and that's what's so interesting about the drive of the character to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It raises a lot of interesting questions about what is valuable, what is knowledge. Is knowledge and value a thing that can be coupled? Does it need to be? He's one of those characters where, like, his mission sounds really simple until you start to figure out concretely what the fuck that mission actually is.
Yeah, and, like, you know, I'm just trying to think if I've ever read anything where Brainiac was confronted with how stupid his mission is.
I don't think I ever have that. See, here's the thing. Comic book writers are great. They're very creative, very important people. A lot of them are very smart, and a lot of them are very philosophical. But more often than not, they're kind of dumb. So, they're not gonna be like, hey, I created this character that seeks knowledge. Cool, we all know what knowledge is. Let's just roll on this train for decades and decades and decades and act like it's not a vague notion.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Again, not trying to diss anyone, because, you know, Grant Morrison's my favorite writer of all time, but, like, on some level, you gotta be like, you have to choose to ignore the important question or the premise doesn't work anymore.
Right, and, like, I think it would be very fascinating for... You know, you could do a really interesting Brainiac 5 origin where he is finally confronted with the absurdity of his mission at some point, and that... Like I just imagine, like, Brainiac's in the middle of, you know, harvesting another city, another planet or whatever, and then, you know, someone comes up and pleads with him to spare their planet, and he's like, there's no value in your pleading. I do not care for your planet. It is beneath my radar. I am here because I am seeking knowledge. You don't have anything for me, but but you are on my way, kind of thing. Yeah. And then for them to go, well, if you destroy us, how will we ever create knowledge that you want? And just for that to be the moment that, like, gives him pause. And, like, just at that point, he's unable to justify the mission anymore. That would be absolutely fascinating. Again,
never talked about, because my previous point about comic book writers, but there's an interesting thing that goes on in Brainiac 5 as opposed to Brainiac, where Brainiac 5 has a kind of the Iron Man thing of, like, most of his stories and most of his arcs is him solving problems he's created, but, like, very distinctly different than Brainiac, who's always taking and destroying things. Brainiac 5 is always making things. And I think that turn is kind of interesting, where, like, he doesn't want to possess knowledge. He wants to, like, create it. And he kind of never can.
Ah, that's nice. I like that. Yeah, see, I really like that idea. There's your Brainiac 5 Year 1 story. Is Brainiac is confronted with the absurdity of his mission and then decides to rethink it and comes to the logical conclusion that he must help spread life in the universe so that new knowledge can be created.
Have you got... Is this in Justice League or is this... No, it's in Justice League because it has that badass Batman line where Batman's like, cry me a river to Superman. But there's an episode of Justice League where Brainiac and Darkseid team up. And it's one of the most interesting things because part of the reason they team up is because they think they both want to take out Superman. But Brainiac double-crosses Darkseid and basically assesses that Apocalypse has nothing of value. And that's kind of fascinating. Especially if you think about Darkseid and the New Gods as more of just, like, ethereal ideas and not, like... And you don't judge them necessarily as people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit of a weird conclusion for Brainiac because, you know... boom tubes and mother box is a living computer and all that stuff, but...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, though. That is, like, how does Brainiac react to things that he just is unable to comprehend? Like... Because
he's a computer, he has a specific scheme of knowledge he can't go beyond. There are things he won't understand.
Yeah, like, I imagine Brainiac looking at the Mobius chair and going, it's a chair. like not realizing its capabilities, its power.
Or a Green Lantern ring, right? Because like Brainiac relies very heavily on that really bad Western conception that knowledge or rationality and emotion are different things. And they're not, but like seeing like a Green Lantern ring, which is powered by will and emotional spectrum and technology just merging in that, I have no idea how we process that.
Yeah, because like we've talked about the science of a Green Lantern ring before, how like it's so alien and kooky, and there is like literally a justification for it based on neuroelectrical discharges and everything, that if you could somehow collect the excess energy created by that, then you could conceivably, you know, create a power source. But I don't know if it'd be powerful enough to, you know, even get off the ground, much less fly across the universe. But still,
oh, absolutely.
But all that regardless, it is just really interesting that Brainiac, you know, how it's this really interesting question in philosophy, and of course Brainiac would like read Heidegger and go, "The fuck is this? Why does he keep using the word being?" But like it's that really interesting question in philosophy that comes up of epistemology. How do you know the limits of your knowledge? How do you know what you don't know? Not to get all Rumsfeldian here, but to get on all Rumsfeldian, there are known knowns, there are unknown knowns, there are known unknowns, and there are unknown unknowns. There are like all these different levels of what you can be capable of understanding. And so if he just has programming to understand a very strict, very limited perception of knowledge, of like, to Brainiac, knowledge is technological capability, but there's so much more than that he's missing out on, and that's just that great underlying contradiction that does quite beautifully lead to Brainiac 5. We're just missing that middle chunk where there's the character arc, right?
Oh no, absolutely. And I mean, there are Brainiac stories that kind of assess not the knowledge question, but the technology question, where like, I remember there is specifically a comic, because there's a collection of like the greatest Brainiac stories ever told or whatever. I read through that just to get an idea, and there's one of them where Superman's touring Brainiac's Museum of Technology, and something he has everything in a display case, and then he just has an empty display case, and he says, "Even this is technology." The idea of a display case.
Interesting.
And that brings up like it's weird that like he would even destroy anything given that he understands technology on that level.
Yeah, but like that's the thing, his view is so limited because he doesn't understand how, he somehow doesn't understand invention even though he understands technology.
This is the thing where like the longer he stayed in the DC animated universe, the dumber he got, because at some point it went from collecting tactile things to just arbitrarily collecting air quotes data, whatever that meant.
Yeah, I don't know, like I feel they used him fairly sparingly. I've got to rewatch Justice League, but he only shows up that one time in Justice League before.
Well, he shows up that one time in Justice League, but he's got that crossover with Static Shock, and that's mostly what I mean. Okay,
see, and I don't know, I don't really count a lot of the crossovers with Static Shock because
those are weird.
None of them are good.
No, they're not. Although that Batman Beyond one where Future Static's a badass is kind of cool.
Well, that's not a crossover with Static Shock. That's Static Shock crossing over into the DCAU proper, right? Like, I remember the Green Lantern episode of Static Shock. That's stupid.
Although it had that really fantastic moment where Static was upset that there was a great male black superhero and he went bad and he was concerned about that image.
Yeah, that was cool, but
the whole episode is just stupid after that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I guess I wouldn't really count that because I just finished watching through Superman the Animated Series and I feel like that worked really, really well.
Yeah.
And then, from what I remember in Justice League, there's the one time he teams up with Darkseid, and then he is destroyed. There's
Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah, and then there's the stuff with Lexiac, and
I hate that.
Really?
See, okay, I have a really unpopular opinion on Justice League Unlimited, which is both seasons are brilliant build-ups with really complex issues that cannot be solved by just punching a thing, and then the final episodes of both seasons are solving those issues by just punching a thing.
Okay. I guess I can see that. I don't know, I really liked the way that they merged Lexiac and dealt with Lex Luthor being able to manipulate Brainiac by, showing him some of the stuff that he is incapable of. Oh, no, that was Justice League. That wasn't Unlimited. Or was it? Shit.
I see. I haven't seen any of those shows in a long time. I need to go back to all of them.
I'm pretty sure it was Unlimited because Lex Luthor was running through for president in that season.
Okay, then that's the first season of Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah. But, to get back to the point, Lex was showing Brainiac, and Brainiac was intrigued by it. Lex was showing Brainiac the capabilities of the free mind, the non-logical, to get all Star Trekian, the non-logical, Brainiac makes the robot versions of himself to take on the Justice League, and Lex goes, no, we can do so much better than that. And then he makes the parodies of the Justice Lords to, psychologically fuck with them, and that's just obviously not something Brainiac would think to do. Because he doesn't understand that side of things.
That's that cool thing with the pairing of Lex Luthor and Brainiac. And Smallville kind of does this because Brainiac's in that show too, and James Marsden plays Brainiac 5, which is the coolest thing ever. But Smallville does this a little bit where Brainiac's not unaware of things like culture. He just simply has a very stereotypical, very classical canon understanding of it, and him and Lex bond over that.
Yeah,
and that's kind of interesting. We're if you can define Brainiac as being more than just electricity means technology and stealing it, then there's a sense of Brainiac assimilates anything that he considers to be a useful social norm. You could do a lot of cool stuff with race and representation and stuff like that with that. Specifically when you look back at bizarre technological anecdotes, crash test dummies for women didn't exist for the longest time until people realized the physical bone structures are different. So Brainiac would be shitty at fighting a woman or something like that.
Interesting.
I mean, not specifically that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, his knowledge base would be skewed by the societal hang-ups of the people that he got that knowledge from.
Right, especially because, again, it'd be what's dominant and what's useful, so, anything that's disruptive to that would be interesting. Almost like Brainiac is the ultimate personification of ethnocentrism.
Yeah, and I just don't know how interested he would be in the cultural side of things. In my mind, he collects stuff, he collects knowledge for the technology, and then he collects all the knowledge, and the cultural stuff he just kind of stores like you do, ebooks or whatever. He just has it, but he never goes through it, or he never. It's just beyond his ability to comprehend. He could data it. He could recite every word and tell you what its meaning is based on what other people have told him what its meaning is, but he would never be capable of understanding that meaning in and of himself.
Which I think is legitimately interesting. I don't think Brainiac judges knowledge, right? He takes things that he deems valuable, and so he judges the things that he hasn't taken, but it doesn't seem like he has any sort of use or hierarchy or this is good knowledge, this is bad knowledge kind of distinction.
Yeah, I think he just understands various levels of refinement. I guess the best example I could think of that is this old story about a student and a science professor. They're science is always wrong. That's the problem with it. I mean, back in the day, they thought the universe revolved around the Earth, then they realized the Earth revolves around the sun in a perfect circle, and then they realized, no, it's not a perfect circle. So it's just always been slightly wrong, and it's always been wrong in just slightly different ways. And the professor says to him, if you think those are all wrong for the same reason, then you're more wrong than all of them put together. Where it's like this understanding of, like, okay, there's first understanding that the stuff in the sky are independent actors and not like, you know, a painting by the gods. And then there's understanding being able to plot them out and see that they move around. And then there's being able to understand, hey, actually, if you think about it, maybe it's not just moving around us. Maybe we're moving around them. It would be the same from our perspective regardless. And so, you know, you slowly get, you know, more and more refinement. You can refine an idea. I feel like Brainiac can tell, you know, lead is a better blocker of radiation than aluminum, but he would understand that you could use both in different ways. So I think he would refine and categorize technologies, but I don't think he would like rate them. I don't think he would prefer one thing to another. He would prefer probably the most effective solution kind of things.
What happens when Brainiac faces something that makes him outdated?
Oh, man.
Like, what happens if you take Brainiac when he's still kind of early Krypton style and just throw him into the Legion of Superheroes universe?
Yeah.
Like, what if he legit can't understand what the technology is, but he knows it's there?
And see, I guess the danger of that would be, like, what if he assimilates that technology?
What if he can't? Like, what if he physically is just so outdated? Like, if he's a USB port in a USB 3.0 kind of plug.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. That's really fascinating. I guess this kind of like comes down to, how does data function? Is it all ones and zeros, or like, is there the possibility of creating data that, you know, uses a fucking 2 or something, right? Like, what would that even look like? Like, if you had binary that wasn't 1-0 binary, if you had something that was the equivalent of it but a step beyond that used more digits, my computer wouldn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really fascinating idea.
The episode that introduces Kang in Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, it's a really interesting thing where Kang is centuries beyond the intelligence of Tony Stark. So Tony sits in his little time machine chair, trying to hack into it with Jarvis, and their way to do it is, let's just backtrace every update until you get to something you understand. And that's kind of brilliant.
I mean, I'm a little saddened to know that we still won't have technology that when you buy it, that's just it. You don't need to update it.
Well, no,
hundreds of years
not.
in the future. That would be ideal, but you know, whatever. All right. Is there anything else we want to talk about with Brainiac?
I just think he's like also one of the coolest looking villains. Just that whatever design he's given, I feel like is always a really interesting design, except for that time he was wearing a purple shirt and black underwear.
All I want is a decent pair of pants. Okay, how about this? Robot Brainiac or biological Brainiac?
Robot.
I actually like biological. Again, this is the thing I really liked from Jeff Johns' Brainiac. I really like biological is the home source, and that he creates like clone bodies and robots with his intelligence in them.
See, I can live with that. I mean, I don't have like, it's not a thing where like I feel like you ruin the character if you pick one or the other, because again, Brainiac 5 is organic and robotic, so I just prefer Brainiac as full blown robot as opposed to part organic, because it's that Ultron thing of like you never really know if he's dead.
Gotcha. I kind of like the idea that like he put some of his like I like the idea that he starts as just a bodiless artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
And then he creates a body. Like, he assimilates a culture that knows how to grow, like, clones for stem cell research or whatever. And he just starts creating bodies for him, like, physical bodies for himself.
Age of Ultron.
Yeah, I think that would be cool.
Yeah. No, I'd love that. It's weird, because I feel like Brainiac can be taken in a lot of really bizarre and interesting directions, but he kind of gets held back simply because we want to maintain the premise that we never thought about, which is knowledge, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's unfortunate. Again, I think there's a really interesting character arc that we just haven't... Like, we've seen the end result of, but we haven't explored the character arc itself, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have a hard time even recommending, like, here's how you go and get into Brainiac. I'd be like, I mean, there's Action Comics where he shows up for a little bit. There's Legion of Superheroes in general, because Brainiac 5 is almost always there, and then animated series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's my thing is, like, okay, you want cool Brainiac? Animated series is really good. I've enjoyed what they've done with him in Justice League Action just for the lulz, where he has to, like, say, like, he uses computer command words before every sentence, which is amazing. From what you say, I'm going to have to check out Legion of Superheroes at some point. That sounds really cool.
The cartoon and the comics, both are worth it.
No, I meant the cartoon, but yeah, I'm sure the comics.
Yeah. No, the cartoon's great. The cartoon, he's got like a crush on Superman, and it's fantastic.
Oh, that's adorable.
It really is. He goes to the holodeck and plays out elaborate situations where he sacrifices himself to save Superman, and Superman cradles him to death.
That is just hilarious.
It's so funny. I love it.
Oh, man. Oh, okay. Anyway, yeah, like, our recommended list is one of those things where there's stuff that does Brainiac well, but there's nothing that I feel has done him perfectly, or at least perfectly for me. If you want a really good Brainiac, go watch Age of Ultron.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, go watch Age of Ultron. Watch that episode of Justice League he's in is actually really good, so go with that too.
Yeah. Okay, Steve, what are we going to be what character will we be talking about next time?
So I don't want to talk about. I was gonna say like a bigger character, but then I'm like, it's kind of dull to just keep talking about like really massive names. So let's talk about Superboy.
Okay, I'm cool with that. Superboy it is. All right, everyone, thank you very much for watching, listening, whatever. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the Exile.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.